Welcome guys to an episode with the Doomed Hell. Today we're going to be starting a new series onto the channel, something I think might take off because it is just so pertinent to me that I think it's very interesting. And it is the PC Part Picker History video time, where I will be talking about completed builds that were built back in the day that are very impressive to me, or that do reminisce a little bit of what it takes to become a gamer and what it takes to be part of the PC master race, or whatever they call it nowadays. So today I kind of want to go through a couple of builds, and this video will be specifically on the FX 8 through 50 build log. So I will be building an FX 8 through 50 build for $100 very soon. And kind of showing off the performance of that beast. The benchmarks will be glorious, I believe. But before that, I kind of wanted to make a couple of these videos, PC Part Picker, PC Part Picker history builds. So at first glance, the FX 8350 was not so good in terms of price to performance, or in terms of raw performance, I should say. It was the AMD flagship. It got preceded by the 9370 and 9590, but those were basically the same chip. But the A350 was always the one that people bought because they had the original and the black edition, which both had boasted 4 gigahertz and were very easy to overclock. So the CPU came out in late 2012. Before it had the 8150, which was a significant difference, to be honest. The 8150 demanded a lot more voltage for the overclock, but that baby could be pushed to 4.8 gigahertz, no problem. But really, the pièce de résistance for the 8350 was that they made a lot more of them, and they were able to be pushed past 5 gigahertz. That was really the two big selling points for quite some time. We're talking 2013 to 20, well, they're still kind of relevant now, but I would argue 2017 or 2018 is when they fell off, right when the Ryzen chips came out. Because when Ryzen had come out, especially when the 1400 and 1500X CPUs came out, those basically destroyed FX's kind of reign on performance. So really what was great about FX at the time, and I will show you some gaming builds that kind of show that off, is that they gave you all the same amount of single core performance in most games, especially at 5 gigahertz. In fact, in 5 gigahertz they were pushing past that kind of i5, i7 performance, while giving you a lot more cores to play with for other tasks, and in a package that was very, very juicy for a lot of people. And this is why. So in case 1, we have a beautiful 2013 build, literally pretty much first day build. Here, we can watch the video here. 11 years ago, 2012 actually, so right before 2013 came out. And we look at the build real quick. So we got a Razer Death Adder, or this is the Death Adder wireless. It's a Battlefield 3 build. So this was a huge game back then. Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, they were really, really big games, because they were, firstly, you could play with your friends. It was really easy to play, kind of like a co-op setup. And secondly, it ran beautifully on PC. It was something to be seen back then. He's got a basic keyboard and a really nice speaker mouse, and he's running the iFinity setup, so he's 3 monitors in one. And he's got kind of a big computer case. This is a Asus Thor. It's pretty large, but the really cool thing back then was, setting up your fan revamp. Now you got 2 USB 3s, which were pretty fast. If you want a little faster, you had the eSATA connector, which I don't think many people ever used, but That was the fastest you got back then. Here, we kind of see what we're working with here. We got an FX8350. This is a 990FX Fatality Gaming motherboard, which is just your run-of-the-mill, overclocking motherboard. He's running, I think, 4x4 gigabytes of RAM and we could look at the specific specs, but I believe it's higher up stuff. And here we got an HD 7970 Direct CO2, which is the larger of the 7970s, and is one of the better GPUs. He might have bought this also on a sale because this was really late in the 7970 era. Keep in mind, the R9 series really came out 2013-ish, so this was pretty late in the HD era. And the cooler is an H80. It's a Corsair H80, which is this 120 mil. So he probably wouldn't have liked the surprise of dried out coolant one day, which must have happened eventually. And I'm not sure what kind of power supply he used, but we know that this is brand new stuff. He's got 2 SSDs as well. Very proud of that fact. And he's got an 850 watt PSU, which makes perfect sense because one aspect of the HD series was eventually you do want to get 2 of them in crossfire. So here we can kind of see what he's got. So A350 H80, like I said. So the RAM is 4x4 gigabytes and it's 1866 CL9. So this is quite high stuff. Usually these kits can be pushed past 2200 on these motherboards with basically the same cast latency. So that's very good stuff. And here we can kind of see the first real bottleneck of like today, which is he's running 250 gigs SSDs, presumably in RAID 0. Yeah, RAID 0, which is very fast. I mean, that's a very fast setup. It's, SATA X2. But both of them were $400 back then, so $800 just for 2 SSDs, under 1 terabyte storage. I mean, this is like crazy, right? Absolutely crazy. And I see he's got 1,000 watt power supply actually. I think. Okay, I see. So okay, I understand. And another thing that is very important to understand is that back then power supplies, there was no such thing as like a PSU tier list, and so whatever the wattage was, whatever the certification was, is what people went for. Here we see that he also got a Blu-ray reader, which is very interesting because back then that wasn't not many people got those, and he got an actual copy of Windows 8, triple monitors. And here's another thing that's interesting. Likely 60 hertz. Yeah, likely a 60 hertz monitor. Because at that time, the actual refresh rate did not matter. We were still in kind of like LCD era. It was more about the coloring of the monitor, which is crazy. And if we look at some of his benchmarks, he's running Battlefield 3. This is really crazy. Even today, this is pretty crazy setup. And we see that in overclocked with probably like medium to high settings is what he wanted. He was getting just under 60 FPS. So we see that the priorities also changed back then. We cared more about just being able to run the game and with like haphazardly what would you call that, like haphazardly stable FPS over like really high FPS, which is kind of what we like today. So that's a bit of a difference. So that's the first build. This is kind of like your guy that would buy out right away. And I believe he probably paid just under $2,000 for this build, which is very good. And what he would have probably eventually done is probably bought a R9 290X 8GB card, or maybe waited for the R9 Furies, or if he had gone with NVIDIA, he probably bought a GTX 1080 eventually. That would have been probably a pretty good way to build it up. So that's really the first build. The second build, which I really liked, because this is kind of what you would expect from your seasoned veteran, in computer building is a guy who was building like this is a multi-year build. So in this picture, we really have a snapshot of what usually happens with builds, and that's that a lot of things are not really adding up. They're from different eras. Let's quickly look at what that would look like in the build list. So he's got an FX processor with an H80 liquid cooler. He's got a UD3 motherboard, which is a little older than what you would expect for this CPU. He's got 4x4 gig, so he's got 16 gig kit, but it's a very old kit because this is 1333. So this is like a 2009 kit. He's got 60 gigabyte SSDs. I don't think anyone's seen 60 gigabytes in quite a while. And then he's got two 1 terabyte hard drives. And he's got not one but two GTX 560 Ti 1 terabyte cards in SLI. And and the rest is kind of like basic, but kind of strange as well, right? And he's got the stickers he's got EVGA stickers, he's got all of the stickers. So why did this happen? Now I read a little bit about the thread, and this guy used this for some science number crunching. Usually that's statistical science, so like R language crunching, things like that. But he also played some video games with it, and what would happen back then is people would buy in like around 2008, 2009, 2010, and then eventually they would want to have better hardware. Now with Intel, if you had gone with Intel, you were stuck with whatever you got. So if you got a early i7, like a first i7 in 2008 or 2009, you were stuck with that until you had enough money to buy in the new stuff, which was second gen or third gen. But if you had gone with AMD, the benefit was with AM3 and AM3 Plus, they boasted that this platform would give you better performance later. And so a lot of people bought into this. So originally this guy had a Phenom CPU in it. So that's a 4-core, 4 gigahertz CPU, which competed against like a Core 2 quad, maybe like an i5, like an early i5, but it was definitely not very powerful. And eventually, when he needed more performance, he just went to the 8350 CPU. It was, very small bump. We're talking like $160, and he got a new level, a new era of CPU performance, like an era that allowed him to play for at least another 10 years. And that was very incredible for FX. It was unheard of before that. If we're talking about 10 years before FX in 2002, everyone that had a CPU in 2002 was struggling to run anything, like even just running Windows was not possible. So to think that with FX we were able to firstly put it in our old CPU slot in an old motherboard, and secondly being able to actually run modern day stuff with it is incredible, and it's something a lot of people don't understand. So another thing is we look at this setup with two pairs of hard drives, 260 gigabytes. So this would have been probably his Windows, or maybe his like data center for whatever kind of work application he had, and it allowed him for quite fast reads and writes. But I think that in this case he was actually doing a 0+1. So 0+1 means that these two hard drives are copies of each. This hard drive and this SSD are copies of each other, and this hard SSD and this hard drive are mirroring or duplicating the same task. And so it allowed him for actually very fast speeds. Here he's boasting about 1 gigabyte per second and 800 megabytes. So that's actually kind of decent for back then. I know now we're talking about like 12 gigabytes per second in RAID, but again, back then that was just incredible. It was very, very good. He's still running a cassette CD setup, and it's another H80 liquid cooler. This was a very popular early AIO, and for good reason. I mean, this guy was running 5 gigahertz no problem. Same with the last guy as well. So that's a cool build. And then the other build that I just saw just now he bought it for less than $900. And you have an H60 AIO this time, which is a little thinner, an M5A99X, so it's not a 990FX motherboard. This is kind of like your run-of-the-mill big VRM non 990FX, and it's a very good motherboard at that. He's got, again, another very strong gaming RAM setup, 4x4, 2100. So this is very good stuff. With these kits, it was really important to get that cache latency low. But again, very good motherboard. And then you got this old. This is kind of like a budget, sub 1 terabyte hard drive, and then he put probably most of his money in the SSD, which is a 120 gigabyte. This build was likely to be, there you go, 2012, and it seems to be very good overall. But what really caught my eye here is that he bought a PlayStation 3D monitor, which is actually something I'm getting into. And he has here, you have your glasses that he's charging right now. And this is incredible because that's something that I like, that I want to get into. He's got, so the other guy had two 560 Ti's, and likely that worked out because he got an SLI bridge to work with it. Sometimes they literally gave it to you if you bought the GPU. In other cases, it was kind of hard to find. But with this one, he just went with a Radeon 7970 once again. This one is a cool one because it has two mini display ports instead of your large one, which was, in my opinion, that's the way to go. If I ever made a GPU, I'd go with mini displays. Everything else is kind of cheap. But again, it's just interesting that he kind of paired up. Some things he put more money than others. He has a really expensive monitor, which is pretty cool. And then when you look at how he put his gaming computer up, it's interesting because it's not necessarily like, I think he could have probably put a bit more money in something. So the RAM is okay. He could have maybe cheaped out on the RAM a little bit. At least running 2x8 would have been nice, and 1600 megahertz. That would have been probably cheaper. His CPU and AIO is fine. For now. The motherboard is fine. The graphics card is fine, but the power supply and the SSD combo, it doesn't really make that much sense. And then here he also talks about how so the OCZ ended up burning up, so that's very sad. But again, that's the price of kind of pairing up the wrong things together. But this is a great build. It's a sub $900, and then everything looks just great on it. So I'm very happy for this guy. So that's pretty much it for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed some of the content here, and hopefully I can make some more later. And have a great day.